from a customer perspective or customers offering perspective, customer experience perspective, how are you seeing adoption of machine learning to make customers' life easy?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, one of the customer-centric use cases are customer wanted personalized and intelligent communications going to the customer. So, in this way, in this context, AI is a big ally and support to make sure that the product we are pushing to the customer or the services being handled with the customer is intelligently handled. And any like the other two areas which mentioned here on the risk side or on the compliance side, most of the data inputs are mostly on the transactional data. Bank has a lot of transactional data available, but many banks or most of the banks has difficulty in capturing the behavioral data of the customer, because most of the historically you always had provided channels wherein the transaction get passed through. But I probably in the last 3 years or 4 years, you started capturing behavioral information of the customer. Where did this transaction happen? Why did it happen? What was his preferences? So many of these behavioral aspects of the customer is not, the information itself is not there. So for your AI to learn and act on this, especially to making it more personalized or making it more relevant for the customer, that we still have struggles. So, but still the banks have started, like we ourselves have started working on the next best product offering for the customer with the information available. But that will only mature over a period of time to capture information further about the different behavioral aspects of the customer preferences, customer social media activities. So this information gathering and collating inside, that would also help to this to mature. So in my view, personalizing intelligence, like I will stress again, because if you look at in social medias, what complaints you get, mostly customers says, okay, I get repeated SMS like this, I get repeated unwanted calls asking for loans, I get repeated when I ask for something, the response by is completely different. So these things, as data get matured, I think the banks would become much more ready in offering this in terms of product and services at the customer front.
Thanks, Ahmed, another, I think the adoption of AI and machine learning has been one of the mega trend we observed over last 10, 15 years. And another mega trend which is transforming the banks, and we have seen the rise of neobanks, is adoption of mobile banking or adoption of mobile penetration. Okay, how do you see these two mega trends converging into? Are they converging? Are they converging together? Do you see AI and the adoption of AI and adoption of mobile, or even mobile first, shaping up the future of banking? Are you seeing, sitting where you are from a digital perspective, banks launching mobile first products or mobile first services, or is it certain services which are only offered on mobile banking and letting go of the concept of omni-channel, which was very widely popular a while back?
See, I have a different view here. Maybe it's not going to be welcomed by everybody, but this is my view. The future is not going to be for omni-channel anymore. Even mobile first, mobile only, this is going to be for fintech companies and these kind of, let's say, SME organizations building services for customers. We as banks will transfer, and this is happening today. As you know, a lot of mergers happened. In Saudi, we have Saudi National Bank now with Samba. We have SAB with Al-Awal Bank or Saudi Hollandi Bank. You will see more and more M&A in the future. I believe that by time, the omni-channel concept in the banks will disappear. We will have to go for banking as a service and open banking solutions. Otherwise, you as a bank will not going to have a footprint in the market, because those small entities will become very preferred to customers more than banks. Because today you cannot give the customer a view of his transactions if he has accounts in 3 or 4 banks. And on average in Saudi, we have every retail customer has 2.5 accounts in Saudi. So majority of us has 2 or 3 accounts. So if I want to see my transactions as AISPs will do for us, or PISPs will do for us, I think banks will have a big challenge. So instead of that, you still trying to develop your mobile apps. I don't want to say stop, but I meant that you have to think about moving faster with the banking as a service and open banking rather than thinking about enhancing your omni-channels and your mobile applications. طبعا having AI in the background, as mentioned today by Yasmina, for example, to have a very complex way of understanding the customer, personalized things as mentioned now, this will be using AI. However, in the future, with fintechs and banking as services and new banks, as you mentioned, this has to be the trend and we have to follow. Otherwise, as again I mentioned, we will be left behind.
Thanks, Ahmed. I think that's a very unique and different view. And I think probably we have to watch the space that how banking as a service evolves. Thanks. And Shino, how are you seeing adoption of mobile penetration or mobile penetration shaping up how banks are strategizing their future?
Yeah, so I think like most banks would have witnessed a surge in adoption to the mobile banking naturally through COVID. So I think customer behavior, if you look at it pre-COVID and post-COVID, like in this now also, like when the COVID is coming down, you can see that this behavior of the customer is sustaining. Customers are mostly adopted. There were a set of customers who have never used mobile, but they started using it. And now if we look at the detailed trend of the customers, this trend is continuing. We have not seen a very deep, okay, slight dip is there, but not a very deep dip in terms of the customer adoption or who has actually used mobile. So in my view, these channels some of these channels will remain. And it is up to the customer preferences what to use. And these technologies will complement each other. AI is actually will complement your mobile first strategy if you have a mobile first strategy, or if you are doing as banking as a service, which is you are embedding your services within the customer journey itself, wherein he is maybe outside of your touch points, he is with a completely different website, but as a journey of purchasing something, the banking and services which get embedded. But all these things actually, in my view, will complement. So as a bank, you should start building capabilities which can plug in at different touch points and leverage it. So you have AI capability. So your AI capability can be consumed at different front-end channels to personalize your offerings, plus your third party can take it as a service and personalize for him. So this, in my view, all these technologies will start complementing each other, and banks should look at creating capabilities at the back end, looking at the future and try and use it in multiple channels to optimize.
Thanks, I think we spoke a lot on how do we see it, and when it comes to adoption, I would like to hear the panel's view on what are the challenges, whether it's technological or cultural or ethical or business-related challenges are we observing when we are adopting AI to have an AI-first vision? Probably, Sri Lakshmi, you are working on those models. What are the challenges you are facing, and how are you overcoming them?
Thank you, Alok, for that question. If you really don't mind, I just wanted to add on to that question of the mobile adoption versus AI we just spoke about. I couldn't stop myself. See, I don't think we should look at AI as a standalone comparatively to everything else that exists in your organization today. AI is an integral part of how you run your business. It is a simple example. When the customer opens a mobile app, what should he see on his first page? Is what will AI machine learning will enable. I'll give you an example. I went to the ATM. My card was expired, so it was stolen by the ATM. I didn't realize that the expiry was there. And then I opened my mobile banking. The first page I should ideally see is, do you want to place a replacement for your ATM card? That's how AI needs to be embedded with your existing channels and how you want to run your business. It should not be looked at a separate entity or a separate enabler. It is an inherent enabler for every channel, for every way of how you're running or how you're treating your business. It is there to help increase adoption. It is there to help drive adoptions from those features which were not available all this while, or people may not be aware that the features exist today. So how can you increase, how can you make people aware is where AI will come into picture and enable the usages of every channel. So that's my take on the previous question. So coming back to your question, so what are the challenges and where do people find it hard to adopt? I think there is a simple answer to this question. People fear to adapt to something that they can't understand. People fear to adopt to something that you can't explain. So if today I have done a model and I am not able to explain to my business, why do I say this customer is risky? Why shouldn't we be including this particular customer in any product offering? If I am able to explain, then people trust is one, people confidence goes high. So I think any practice of AI, that's when I said ethical is very important. You should be able to explain, you should be able to govern what you're trying to do. That's when we'll bring in the trust and the endorsement from the business holders. They will not be comfortable to use something that you cannot explain how and why.
Thanks, thanks, Lakshmi, and I fully agree on the education part and explainability part. That becomes of paramount importance to all the business. End of the day, they take the risk. Thanks for that. Ahmed, are you seeing any additional challenges in adoption of AI vision?
For sure, what we have mentioned about people and the culture, especially the DNA of the organization. I believe those people who are working on the front end, especially the call centers and operations, back office, they are a little bit resisting to cooperate, and this will always put the organizations on a challenge. What we prefer to do is that we engage them, and instead of that we just ask them to move or to change their career, because having, let's say, for example, call center agents who really knows the problems of the customers and behavior and how the customers normally behave in different situations, if you make use of them to be there to design and develop your conversational, for example, AI for the call center, I believe that you will get the benefits out of their experience and knowledge, and instead of that you have the resistance from them to adapt. This is maybe one of the key things. I don't want to talk about what you have mentioned at the early stage of the regulation, as well as the cloud solutions, complexity, cost, and these kind of things. But the main, I think, let's say, factor here is the human factor, and having those people engaged and capitalize on their experience will for sure enhance and remove that challenge.
Thank you, Ahmed. And Shino, is there any additional challenge do you see across tech stack or cultural or ethical?
Yeah, just to add on the technology side challenges, like I mentioned, availability of information which is scattered across multiple systems and gathering it, and because of the legacy architecture most banks would have had, that may be a challenge most banks can face. The second point is, like Ahmed mentioned, on your whether you have to invest such a large computing power internally, wherein you could, like, 1/4 of the cost you could do it in the cloud. So these sort of like balancing act many banks would think, but primarily I feel like data availability, cleansing, and learning it from this thing for AI to be matured, that is the most challenges. I think now, at least in terms of the banks, already started what I see or what I speak to my peer colleagues, I can see most of the banks would have embarked, at least as an innovation, to start on the AI initiatives. But all of them actually comes to a stage wherein you are not able to really practice and embed it and take a decision purely on AI, because your data is yet to be matured to have sufficient information to reach that matured stage. So I think one of the challenge I could really, in terms of implementation, is data aggregation and data availability.
Thanks, so much. If I could request all the panel members to share probably their key takeaway message for the audience in terms of how banking executives do and don'ts for AI first vision. Ahmed, starting from you.
A lot of challenges there, and in order to be able to adapt, you have first to start from the strategy downstream. You have to make sure that you have the data ready, you have the technical capabilities and AI capabilities within your organizations, even if you are going to hire external people, because normally those people are not yet within banks. I believe that M&A will supersede the omni-channel and applications of the banks. I believe that open banking and banking as a service will dominate. Metaverse and having interactive, let's say, customer experience is going to also change the way of banking doing business in the coming, let's say, 3 to 5 years.
Thank you so much. And I can't disagree with you that data being ready is one of the first step to think of AI. Thank you. Sri?
I would probably add on to your question of how would you adoptions. So this my takeaway for the team is when you want to look at using AI and increasing its adoption, few primary things needs to be happen. One is get your basics rights, which is data, which my colleagues have already spoken, so I don't need to talk a lot about it. The other one is the adoption and the fear that people have within the organization to come and participate in this kind of initiatives. There is where I think HR needs to come, and you might, this might sound a little weird. What has HR got to do in the AI adoptions? But the way is, when you're trying to, let's say you're trying to deploy a conversational AI in your contact center. Now agents will fear, when this AI goes live, will the agents be not required anymore? It's not like that. To build that model itself, there is a lot of knowledge from the agents that will go. Here is where the HR needs to come back and do a mapping exercise of skills and try to identify cross-functional skills where people can move across teams and contribute to AI teams by giving their business knowledge that they have learned all this while. And at the same time, try learn new technologies and participate and become data scientists. This cross-functional mapping of moving people around, giving everybody an opportunity and making everybody happy about what is going on within the organization will definitely bring in certain level of increased adoption. So try doing that is my recommendation.
Thanks, Sri. I think that's a very beautiful perspective of involvement of the people on the ground and learning from them. Thanks so much. Shino, any tips?
Yeah. So in my view, I think it's more for the banks which has not started. I think because my advice would be you start small, take a smaller use case, you put in cross-functional team towards it, take some external help because probably you will not have skill set internally if the banks are not large enough. So you take some external help and try and embark on this journey. Through the journey, you will figure out a lot of challenges, and that is the only way we will get into it. But building this capability is crucial for in the future, and you cannot have it unless you start it. So you can do a smaller start, be it a smaller use case of customer experience, be it a smaller use case on credit side, or be it a smaller use case for risk management. You start small with that, and definitely the team will build it up on that, and you just need to give the leadership for that.
Thanks. I think that also aligns with what Ahmed said about being open to get external talent, because not every bank has all the talent which is required, and be open to M&As as well. Thank you so much. It has been my privilege to moderate this panel. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Sri. Thanks, for sharing your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we have a huge round of applause for this wonderful panel discussion?